Hello again. Welcome to this webinar. We will still wait for 1 more minute to start, as quite some participants are still entering the meeting room. So I suggest that we start screen sharing now and give it a start. Welcome everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Andreas Birk. I'm one of the session moderators today. The session will last approximately 90 minutes, and it is brought to you by Vivid Worldwide Special Interest Group Vivid TQA, which stands for Testing, Quality and Application Lifecycle Management, focused on the application delivery management products of Micro Focus. Please, next slide. Thank you. I am very pleased to welcome as our today's speaker, Andreas Wiedmann of Micro Focus. He's Senior Principal Technical Consultant from Munich, Germany. He will present us today DevOps with ALM Octane, which will mainly be a live demo. Andreas has a very long track record and is highly experienced with ADM applications like ALM Quality Center and ALM Octane, for instance, supporting leading global industrial enterprises with implementation of ALM Octane. This webinar is recorded and you will receive a link for later replay in about 2 days from now. Your hosts today are, as moderators, Andreas Birk, this is me, and Michael Thiere. He's Technical Manager with Expleo Group. We are both co-leaders of Vivid TQA SIG. And our big thank you goes to Iris Berth and Terry Serrallo of Vivid Worldwide, who have again greatly managed organizational preparation and setup of this webinar. Thank you very much for your support. On this slide, you see the webinar control panel. In its lower part, you have an area where you can enter your questions. All participants today are set on mute. So please use this questions form to enter your questions. We will welcome your comments and questions already during the presentation. And Michael Thiere will then manage the Q&A session and also forward them to Andreas Wiedmann even during the presentation if suitable. With this, it's my pleasure to forward to Andreas Wiedmann.
Okay, hello and welcome to the webinar. So a short introduction to myself. I'm Andreas Wiedmann. I'm technical consultant at Micro Focus, and I'm working out of Munich in Germany. So my responsibilities are in the broad scope of test management, test automation, load and performance testing, and basically everything what's around testing in a broader scope. And I would say I call DevOps my hobby, and this is about the webinar I'm gonna present today. And I think some of the people in the audience already know me, and everybody that knows me, I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint. I'm rather the live guy, so I'd like to show live presentations, whatever that means. We don't know, so live is live. So if it works, it's great. If it doesn't, well, it was live. So just to give a short introduction, but I'm quite confident that we're gonna have it today. So nevertheless, I have to start with some slides, of course, to give the broader context. So I'm not starting with introduction to Micro Focus. I guess everybody knows that. But a little bit of background, what I'd like to present today. So Andreas already mentioned I'm in this business for quite a while. So obviously we all know waterfall, where we actually started, and we all went through the process from waterfall to different ways of developing software until today. And I think DevOps is one of the more advanced ways to develop software today. What you're going to see today, of course, we still support all the different areas, all the different technologies, frameworks, however you'd like to call them. Today, I, of course, will focus more or less on the Agile and the DevOps part, but I still see many of my customers, many of the customers of Micro Focus still as part doing waterfall in a transition path from waterfall to Agile, so all in between. And of course, what you are seeing today is we're supporting all the different areas. The same goes for monolithic applications until I think the more advanced ones with microservices and API. And which I greatly present is you will see a great chunk of Octane today, and Octane is even developed with microservices and REST API, and this is a core functionality in the application. And of course, we're going to use different kinds of systems. So, for example, I'm using partly virtualized. I use some systems on the cloud. So, of course, all of that is also part of the whole infrastructure you're going to see today, or more or less where the system is actually running on. But of course, the solutions you're going to see today are supporting them. One of the interesting parts is because we see here monolithic, for example, mainframe applications. And one of the interesting use cases I saw in the past years was using DevOps on a mainframe system. So actually using DevOps in order to deploy new applications on a mainframe. That's quite interesting to see. So you see all the different technologies, the different systems are coming together, and we can use them even if they are quite not obvious, use them together. Talking about DevOps, DevOps itself is not a single system. DevOps itself usually consists of multiple systems interacting with each other, transporting information, moving information between systems. I need to admit I'm not a big fan of synchronization, because synchronization usually you lose some information. They are not 100% accurate on one system. So therefore, at some point, you need to have one leading system in the middle, which actually drives the others. And the more information you keep in the central system, probably the more effective it is. But nevertheless, of course, you want to have traceability. You want to follow the information. You want to get the most out of it. So therefore, it's usually a combination of a powerful system where you can attach different things to it. Like we see it here in the picture, And we have a leading system with our ALM system, and of course we can attach different various systems, which I see with my customers, and I guess you all have them in your infrastructure as well. Like of course in IDE, this is what we're going to see today: continuous integration, continuous delivery attached to it. We have a huge chunk of testing usually in there, which is really highly important for DevOps. We have a source code management in it. We have a project portfolio usually connected to it, which does the overall management of budget, resources, and so on. And of course, DevOps means it goes to the development, to the deployment, and of course, to the operations at the end. Where I would like to focus today, and you see just part of it, this is the story and the presentation I want to focus today. So taking more the part of development and testing towards the deployment. And of course, we don't want to do that just in a single part, but I also want to give you the outlook how you can use this kind of solution not just for a single team but also for multiple teams. So actually scaling up, if we're talking about DevOps, we're talking about Agile, and there are various frameworks around in the market actually scaling up, and I always like to use the SAFe approach, the Scaled Agile Framework approach, where you have actually multiple teams working towards a release train, working towards an agile and a large solution, for example. A few comments that are, I think, also important is the term of automation. So if we talk about automation today, we often think about test automation. So how can we automate the testing part? And of course, this is a very, very important part if we talk about Agile, because the higher the amount of automated testing is, usually the higher the velocity is. And there was an interesting discussion with a few customers in the past, is about the old days where we actually did more waterfall towards Agile today. If we think about the previous waterfall approach, you usually wrote a manual test case and you had your amount of manual test cases, and then you decided afterwards which test cases are good candidates to automate. Nowadays, and this was a very interesting approach and a very interesting discussion, nowadays you're not thinking about which test cases to automate. You just automate right away. And the overhead you create by automating test cases, which are not really necessary to automate, is less than the time you lose by thinking about test cases to automate or creating manual test cases up front. Because what you're doing in a DevOps and an Agile approach, and everybody knows the term of nightly builds, where you actually build your application every night and you deploy it every night and you test it every night. Even some customers do it even more often than just nightly. They do it on an hourly basis, or even some are even faster. The amount and the time and the optimization you gain actually by rerunning those automated test scripts over and over and over again is much higher than losing the time if you have a test case which you do not necessarily need. So this is one part of the testing aspect, and I just talked about automated test casing. There are also the parts that are important, is not only the functional testing part, but I'm also talking about performance testing and security testing, which is also a very important part towards continuous testing. So yeah. So, and then I talked about automation, and this is what I said. Many people still think automation is test automation. The idea of automation is in DevOps is automating the whole process, and this is the idea I want to and the case I want to present today. And this is a more in-depth use case I want to show in the next 45 to 60 minutes. So And you will see a great amount of automation in there. Of course, you will see an automated test case in there, but you also will see a great amount of automation in there. So in process automation, how to drive the DevOps process by itself, even at some point. And I will try to explain that a little bit more in depth when we get to that. So from the use case, imagine, and I think we all had some kind of experience in that way. Imagine you get to your desk in the morning, your workplace, you look at your CI server, your CD server, and you expected a pipeline to run overnight, and guess what? It's red. Something did not work. So of course, the first thing you do, you try to find out what went wrong. So was it the build process did not work? Was it a test case that failed? So this should be our starting point, and this is what we experience at first. So we're gonna have a look on our nightly build on our pipeline. Actually, it was not nightly. I just ran it before the presentation, and of course it will be failed. We're gonna analyze. We create a defect, and then we're gonna go and use our agile methodologies in order to fix the defect. So we're gonna first put it in the backlog. We assign it to a sprint. We assign it to a release. And have a look around what kind of information we can see as well. And then of course we go into the actual work. So I will switch my head and be a team member and the developer, and I take the responsibility in order to fix the defect. And I do some really high-level coding. No, just kidding. So I will do some easy coding in that part. Actually use the IDE, and this is one of the integrations we definitely going to see. And this is the first part, and this will more or less be really, I will do the work. So I will have to assign priorities, move data, assign the defect, and so on. Once I did the code change, and committed my changes into the Git repository in the source code management system, the rest of the process will run automatically, and this is the part of the automation. So the Jenkins pipeline will automatically start. It will build the application. It will deploy the application automatically. In the meantime, we're gonna scan the application for security vulnerabilities. And afterwards, we are going to test the application from a functional perspective. And then we, of course, want to see that all the process we just did and we just started actually was successful. So then, I call this one my dev lifecycle because this is the part where usually the developers are working. This is a process which goes round and round multiple, even sometimes multiple times a day. But if this dev lifecycle is successful, we automatically start the deployment in the integration environment. So usually there is a multi-tier environment where we have the dev environment, we have the integration environment. Sometimes we have a system integration environment, and then we have the production environment. And once our dev lifecycle is successful, we automatically deploy in the integration environment. I use 2 Docker containers in order for my integration environment where I run my application. And once the application is successfully deployed, are we going to run on the live application in the integration environment? We are going to run another system, another functional verification. Then we're going to run another security verification. Actually, this is a brute force attack against the live application, a dynamic security scan. In the development environment, we are running a static code analysis. So actually, we scan the code for vulnerabilities. Here, we are actually going to test the live application, the deployed application for vulnerabilities. So these are 2 different types of of tests. And then finally, in the integration environment, we're going to start a load and performance test also automatically. And once this is also successful, and this is how I implemented it, I have a manual approval in order to deploy it into the production environment. But of course, if you have this kind of quality gateways, you can also build the system to automatically deploy into the production. So the idea is we probably will, in our presentation today, we probably get somewhere until the deployment into the integration environment, and I think this is the most part, and we can have a simple outlook in the integration environment. And of course, if you have questions afterwards, I hope we have some time to answer some questions afterwards. Okay, so then I go to my virtual machine, and this was just the introduction into what we're going to see in the next 45 minutes. Okay, so I think most of you already heard the term of ALM Octane, and this is my ALM Octane system. So it's my application lifecycle management. The Octane contains a backlog system, a team backlog system where actually we do the work. So the team is actually working the sprint. We have a quality part in it where we store our test cases, and those test cases, of course, can be linked to the entities in the backlog, like our features, our epics, our user stories, in order to make sure that the user stories we are about to deliver are really delivered in a high quality way. I want to start with the pipeline module, and this is what I already open here, and I'm looking right now at my DevOps pipeline. These are the last. This is the history of the runs that happened in the that occurred in or that ran in the past. And as I mentioned, imagine we are getting to our desk in the morning and our pipeline is red, and this is exactly what we see here. So this is the latest run. We can have a look at it, open it up, and it's at 10 minutes past 2. So German time, of course, this is when I ran it the last time in order to create the defect. But we get some more information on the page. So for example, I get a summary here of about the latest runs about problematic tests. And of course, this is the issue why the pipeline was red. And what we also get here, we get an information that we have an oscillating test case and we have an unstable test case. So the oscillating test case is just a subset of the unstable test case, and those test cases are actually quite hard to identify, and those tests are actually quite are not that easy. So if you just look on the pipeline, you probably would not see that the test case that just failed is oscillating. And oscillating means the test case is successful one time, the next time it's not successful, then it's successful, then it's not successful. So it's oscillating, alternating between past and successful and failed in that regard. In order to detect those kind of test cases, and the same goes actually for the unstable test cases, you have to look back in the history of the test case, of the runs. And if you just look at the latest results, you usually don't see that. So you actually have to go back in the system, in the historic data, in order to find out that this test case is oscillating. Why is this so important? Because an oscillating test case usually worsens your velocity, because if you don't know the reason why the test case fails, it breaks your pipeline. And therefore, if it's for no reason, in my case, I know exactly why it is, because I make sure it breaks in order to give you that demo. But in other cases, you actually don't know it. And investing some time in oscillating test cases or in unstable test cases, or even in skip test cases here. So what is the purpose of a skip test case if it's in? So in looking in the data and finding that out actually raises the velocity. If you can fix those issues, you have a higher rate of a successful pipeline, and therefore, of course, a successful delivery and a higher velocity at the end, higher quality, faster output, faster time to market. Okay, so and also if we link the test case to different application modules are areas in the application, I can directly see what is the impact of my failed test case, where do I have an issue, is there something new, is this some old problem, and so on. So what you can do here on this page, you can add some widgets which give you more in-depth data. But this is just, I call it the front page of the pipeline module. We want to have a deeper look into the issue, why our pipeline failed last night, or in my case, 2 hours ago. So I get a summary here, not that important. But first what I get is I get all the different jobs that my pipeline contained. So these are the jobs actually they were called on the Jenkins server. So we're building the application, did the security scan, built the Docker images, deployed them into the Kubernetes environment, and ran our functional test case. Then we can have a look on the test cases. So here I see all the different test cases, and as you can see, I'm running multiple test cases. Most of them are unit test cases, and of course I can start and filter if I have too many test cases in order to see it. I can just filter for the status, and I'm just interested in failed test cases, and this is what I get. I just get one test case which is failed, and if I highlight it, on the right side I get a recommendation. I get a recommendation for somebody who would be probably the best candidate in order to have a look at the issue. Doesn't mean to fix it, but have a look at the issue to analyze why did the pipeline failed. And of course, my name comes up, and here also Octane looks into the system, into the historic data, into the data that are available in Octane. So for example, if it's a test case, who is responsible for the test case, who fixed the defects in the past, who took care of similar incidents, and so on. So, and if I'm the right candidate, I just click on I'm on it. So my name goes there, and everybody else who looks on the same pipeline knows now exactly that I'm the one who takes care of that issue, at least analyzing it, and they can just keep on working in their environment. It's a nice feature, but for collaboration, it's really great. So, and then we can go down and analyze it. So I just follow the links. Yeah, so here I just follow, and I'm following the links to the test case on the Jenkins server, and I can see my report, and this is the report of the real test case. And I can see that I did a test, I did a verification on the website. My application I tested is a website. You will see it in a second. I have speakers here, and I was expecting, I found Lautsprecher, and I was actually expecting speakers. I took a screenshot. So here you can see this is the website, and we have a look in it in a second. So here you see Lautsprecher, where I would expect speakers, and of course this is the real issue, and of course then we fix it. So we can have a look on the live page, and I do a refresh. There is that's the old page, and if I go on the live page, you can see the live page has a Lautsprecher, and I have my development environment, which you can see here. And we can also go and have a look on the integration environment, which is here. And if I refresh it, also the error is on the integration environment, as you can see here. Now we obviously found our defect already. This is what our UFT developer found. That's the report. And now we can go back into Octane, and we want to create a new defect. So I just go in there. So I get an automated test case, but I use my own words. So I always use the same phrase, and I will give it a severity. And of course I can add different values here. I could add story points. I could even assign it to a team right now. And of course this page and this dialog is highly customizable. Another nice feature which I really like is I can already add tasks. So I can already break that defect down into different tasks if I want to. Of course, if you create a user story, you can do the same with a user story. So I just go in and say fix code, and then we say test again. So I make it really simple here, but we all know we will find those tasks later on, and you will probably remember them, and so on. So I just go and add it to the system, and that's it. And now I analyzed it. I know where the defect came from. It's in the system now, and now we want to move on. But Octane here has additional information. As you can see, we have, for example, the backlog items. So we see also which are the backlog items, the entities in terms of defects, user stories were delivered in this build. And we also see the commits. So we can see actually the commits, what was actually changed in the source code, for this build. That was done 2 hours ago. And we can go even further and have a look onto the source code, what actually happened. Because if we have a build that was successful and then we change anything, it's most likely that one of the changes actually broke the build in this regard. So we have a system that brings all together, and of course we have the logs here, and we can see what was the build log actually. So going back, I have to admit that the pipeline module is my favorite module in Octane because it brings together all the different data that are in different systems. So this is not something, we are not generating new data here. What Octane does with the pipeline module, it links the different information from different systems together and makes it a lot easier for somebody to analyze and find the root cause for an issue. So we have the build, we have the entities that were delivered, the backlog items, we have the source code connected to it, we have the test cases connected to it, and many more many more information. So it's really easy to find the right cause for it. And there is one anecdote I can tell, and I'd like to tell for quite often. I was discussing with my colleagues from R&D about a functionality, about a graphic in Octane. It was not good and I wanted it to change, and I had quite some argument about it. And finally, I got my graphic changed. So they put it in there, it was out in the version, it was released, it was in the production version. And a few days before I went to Israel, actually, in order to talk to the guys, they changed it to something else. So my graphic I fought for was gone. So it was something totally different, not that nice anymore. So I went to the guys, to the responsible guys, and said, hey, why did you change my graphic? And they said, we didn't change it. We didn't do anything. And I went to somebody else and said, hey, why did you do that? And they said, no, we didn't do it. Nothing changed. And said, yes, you changed it. Look in the previous version, look in this version. And they just walked away and said, we didn't do anything. 5 minutes later, literally 5 minutes later, they came to me and said, you're right. We changed it. And they used the pipeline module in order to find out why it was changed, how it was changed, or the different things. And they said, yes, you were right, we changed it. And that was the reason we changed it. And here's the bad news, we're not going to change it back. So this is an actual experience from my side how to use the pipeline module. Okay, let's get back to our demo. So we had an issue, we found the issue, and now the next thing is we want to solve our issue. So and therefore I go in my backlog module, and the backlog module is there. I have all my user stories I want to deliver at a certain point. I can see where they are. And of course, where we're going to see it is we expect our new defect, which is down here at the bottom. Of course, every new item is first on the bottom, and because it's very important that we do it today, I will bring it up to the top. So I will just put it in here on number 2. So therefore, we have it up on the top, and we can see it's not yet assigned to a release, and it's not yet assigned to a sprint. That's quite easy to do. So we just, you see on the right side, we have a release, we have a sprint, and we can even have it distributed to different teams. So quite easy, we can take our defect, we can assign it to a release, and we can even go down and assign it to a team. This is what actually happened here right now. So now we assigned it to a team, and if we go back, you can see it's now assigned to a release and a sprint. And you can do that with any of those items very easily. If you do your sprint planning, this is how you actually do that. And we can go even a little bit further. We can drag it, and if we want, we can add it to a feature. And this is the way how to assign it, and very easy in order to, for user stories, for defects, for quality stories, for all the different items in order to do that. So, and as I mentioned, we're talking a little bit of Agile. So I will go in and explain a little bit about the functionalities for Agile within Octane, because you can, Octane does not just focus on a single team working with it. As you can already see, I have a team Germany, I have a team Italy, I can have a team France, I can have a team US, I can have a team Brazil, for example, and so on. But of course, it's if multiple teams are usually working on multiple solutions, they are working on multiple release trains, on multiple large solutions, and of course, you want to, if they are interconnected, if they are they have a relationship, you want to have them in one system. And I see many of my customers now doing the Agile transformation, working in Agile, but what's happening right now, Agile is nice, but if you're working in an enterprise environment, you're not working on one project, you're working on multiple projects, as I just explained. So they are looking for frameworks in order to organize the different teams work together. And that's not that easy. So one of the frameworks is SAFe, which I'm focusing currently on in my system. But there are other frameworks like SLES, Spotify, and so on that can be used with Octane in the same way. So one thing is, in order to shape the backlog, is work with programs. So we use within Micro Focus for all our products, we use Octane in order to organize the teams and organize the release trains. So what you can do, you can organize the different release trains with the program. So for example, if I link my user stories to my Android app, my backlog looks completely different. And I can do that in the same way with using just the backend, and then I just have my backlog separated in a completely other way. And this up here works as a high-level filter. So whenever I create a user story now, it will always be created in that context. It will automatically be linked to that program. So I will just use all programs again in order to get more data. Otherwise, it's going to be boring. That's one feature in order to have multiple projects working in the same environment. And this is what I mentioned. You always want to have not just one project or one team. Actually, you want to have multiple, but you want to chunk it up. So the next thing is, if we are talking about SAFe, for example, and we need to do a program increment planning. Yeah, so I just go and do my planning now. And we're having look at the boards. Boards are always very important for in Agile. So for example, on the left side, I see all my features I want to deliver at a certain point, and I have my different releases. And now I can, if I have a feature and I want to have the feature in a specific release, I can just drag it over. Now that's quite easy. It's almost the same feature as if you are working on the physical board in your office. Yeah, I fully agree. Nothing beats the physical board in the office, where you can have your post-it and drag it from the left to the right. That's unbeatable. But nowadays, everybody agrees probably that's the only way actually to do that. And also, if you are in different locations, you have to have a digital board in order to do that. So this is an easy way actually to do your release planning or your PI planning if you're following the full the full safe rules. So this is quite easy, and you can, of course, you can drag it to the different releases. Now let's jump into one of the releases. And therefore I go in my sprint planning, and then I focus up here on my release 2.3, and I get a rather similar board, as you can see here. So I just collapse sprint 1, or I can also get some more area here. So let's just collapse it. And you can see on the left side, I have a few features that are not assigned to any kind of sprint right now. So also here, the same one. If I do my sprint planning, I can drag my features over there where I actually expect those features to be delivered. What I can do additionally, and here it gets interesting now, I can also group it in to the teams. So in the PI planning, it's usually you don't have all the features delivered by the same team. You have different teams actually delivering different items, and they have dependencies. So for example, I have my team Italy on the bottom, I have my team Germany in the middle, and if I see, okay, team Germany cannot do it, then I can just move it to the team Italy down there if I want, or I can move it back up. So it's quite easy just to move the items back and forth. And whatever you do on the board is of course reflected directly in the list view, which you saw previously in the backlog. So all of them are the same. Now I mentioned one other thing. It's the dependencies. So usually you have dependencies between different items. So for example, if we want to look at the dependency of my edit card feature, you can see that if I click it once, I can see which are the dependencies, and if I click it twice, I get a dependency graph. So I can see exactly what are dependencies from my edit card. So I can see I have some downstream dependencies, I have upstream dependencies, and I can see it's red. There is I have an exclamation mark, and I can see something is not working out here. Excuse me. So my edit card is supposed to be delivered in sprint 24. And if I follow the red line, I see that my user story down here is planned for sprint 25, which of course puts all my other downstream items in jeopardy. I can probably not deliver them. And I can also look at them and see, okay, what other items are actually affected by not delivering edit card at that time. So what I probably want to do in this case, I just want to move my user story to one sprint earlier, so I can actually deliver my edit card at the right time, or I move it one sprint later. But then, of course, my payment will be affected. And these are the things that usually have to be figured out during API planning. And this is here, you can see really the effects and the dependencies between those items. You see them even between teams and even between different programs if you want. Okay, then let's go back. And another nice feature in Octane, if you have a specific view you wanna keep or you wanna have, then of course you can just mark it as a favorite, and then you just go back to your favorite view, and this is where we are. That's also a nice feature here. So if you work in a team and you walk different locations, and just create one of those views and everybody sees exactly the same thing. Before we actually fix the defect, one other nice view is, of course, the graphics, the widgets. You can always see the status of different widgets, and you can use the left side, for example, my backlog, my hierarchy, like epics, features, and so on. I can use them as filter as well. As you can see, if I click in different areas, my graphics update, and of course here I don't have any data in there, so I go to the back and then, oh, nothing in there. So let's see, the website should have something. And then you have the different data, or you go up to the backlog and you see the full screen. So the burn down chart we'll see later, because of course for the burn down chart I need to look something else. So now I'm with all the releases, and of course you can see a lot more data in here. So that's really a nice thing. In order to, you then have to recreate those graphics all over again. So you can just use the different filter mechanisms in order to do that very, very easily. Okay, so next step we're gonna want to actually go in and fix our defect. And therefore, I go in my team backlog. As I mentioned before, the team backlog is the area where the team actually works through the sprint. And this is, you see here, this is our defect we just created. And in order to show everybody that I'm working on the defect, I can just drag it on my name. And then you can see it has my avatar on it, so everybody knows I'm working on it, and then I can just simply put it in progress, and that's it. So everybody knows that I'm working on that one. And this is, I think, nothing new. That's a typical way in order to work in Agile, where a team works on it. You can see the parameters up there, which release, which sprint, which team, and of course each of the teams has its own board. They can do their own their board. They can design it as they like it. So, and now you remember what we did before. We created, when we created the defect, we created 2 tasks as well. And here are our 2 tasks. So we have the fix code and we have the test again. So we already expected those tasks to be there for the defect, and we can do exactly the same here. So I can drag it on my name and I can put it in progress. So everybody knows that I'm currently working on that. So why are the tasks important, or why did I show them? Of course, you will see that in a second. So before we actually go in the IDE, I want to show you the My Work page. And the My Work page is my personal page. This is nobody else's page. Looks exactly like that. Here is our defect. Here is our defect. Here is our task, which we just created and which I said I'm taking care of. I have lots of other items in here. For example, I have a manual test, which I should do. I can click here on run and run the manual test if I want. I have a user story here. And if I can open it, and here I have a nice, I can see the user story. I can review it if I want, if somebody else wants me to review it. I can add following. So this means whenever something changes here on the user story, I can actually do that and get a notification. I'm not going to do that here, but what else I can do is I can add comments here, for example, and I can even direct comments to specific colleagues. So I just do that to myself, and okay, so I say well done, for example, and if I enter it and edit, it will pop up in my personal page as well, and we can see it right away. So of course we can see it right here, or we can see it up here, but it also pops up in my comments page, as you can see here. So this is my personal page. Whenever somebody wants me or mentions me in a comment, I get a notification so I can answer it and make sure. Here will be the notification. So if I follow an item, the notifications will come up here. Okay, so I showed you the My Work page for one reason, because now I said actually I want to fix the code, and of course we want to do the web page, and now I do the fix and I go in my IDE, and as you can see down here, this looks very similar to the My Work page. And if I refresh it, of course I will want the latest data. You can see I have I have my tasks down here. I have my defect, which we just created down here. And now I can say and do actually the work and fix my page and go and say, okay, I start working on it right now. And with my high-level experience programming, I will do the fix right now. And I comment one line out and I comment one in, and then I have my speakers on the front page again. So this is very easy. Of course, you probably would do something more complicated, but for our demo, this should be enough. Now, what I can do, or what I will do, I will now commit it to my source code repository. And by doing that, so I commit it, by doing that and adding into the commit message, the defect and the task ID. So you probably were wondering why or where does the connection appear, or how does it happen in the pipeline module that we have our commit with the build, with the test cases, and this is the secret here. I put in the commit message the defect and the task ID from Octane, and then it runs through the system. When it gets built, the test cases and the information get back to Octane, then Octane links all the different things together, so they actually appear here and show up here. So I do the commit and I do the push, and now I push it to my source code repository, and that's it. By doing that, I have a hook in my source code management, and it starts automatically my Jenkins. We will follow that in a second, but there's what you also can do is, of course, I want to advance my task to done. This is what I can do here, and I can do that from the IDE, and I don't have to go in Octane again. And of course, I can move my defect from here as well, and I even can add a comment if I want. So look, for example, here I can type in done, and I post it, and it's posted now in in Octane, and I can move it to fixed, and that's it. So then I'm actually done in my IDE, and I have all the work done actually as a developer, and I can go back, and I can go back to Octane. If I just do the refresh here, you can see the card just moved to the right side, the posted. And if I go in the backlog items, you will see that my the defect we just created is now in the in testing phase. So without me doing anything on the board, just by working within the IDE, it just moved over. So you don't have to switch, you need to go back and forth all the time. So as I mentioned, we started our Jenkins pipeline, and one way to look at it is if we go in the pipeline module and look in the live summary. In the live summary, we can see the different, oops, yeah, here we are. Let's give it a second. I didn't choose any pipelines. I thought okay, so here are my pipelines. So for example, you can see my DevOps pipeline, which is currently running, and we can also add this one here if we want. Okay, so we can see. So you at every time you exactly know where you're running. For example, we are using those panels as well in our R&D department on the big screens. So we have a 20-minute Octane pipeline and then 2-hour Octane pipeline. So everybody of the developers knows exactly how the quality of Octane is at the moment. So that's a nice view. And also what we can do, we go in our Jenkins, and we can of course have a view in on Jenkins as well. I'd like to use the blue ocean so we can actually see what's happening. So we already built the application, we built our Docker containers, and now in the background we are scanning the application for security. So this is a static code analysis, and we are starting our containers on the Kubernetes environment. So this will take another 2 to 3 minutes, and then we're gonna switch over to our testing host. The testing host will be this one, just to see here will be our testing host, and we'll give it a few seconds more. Okay, whatever. I don't think this will do any harm. So in the meantime, we can go back into Octane, and I can show you another module in Octane, which is the dashboard module. And the dashboard module, you can have the widgets from the different areas. I showed you before the widget in the backlog item. which just contained the widgets from the backlog module, but in the dashboard you can combine the widgets from the different areas. So from the quality module, from the pipeline module, from the backlog module, and so on. And you have a huge amount of out-of-the-box widgets here, which you can freely configure. Right now we have 43, I'm sorry. And of course, it's easy to configure them. For example, you can change the scope. So right now I have the defects. I could create that module to reflect features, user stories, whatsoever. I can change the way it's actually displayed in different as a heat map, as a list, as a graph, and so on. What's also new is predefined dashboards. So you can have out-of-the-box dashboards, for example, for the agile quality, as you can see here, which has some demo data. If you just open it up, and you just can see how the graphics would look like in a real environment. So how is the trend for the defects overall? Or for example, if you have a quality issue, so you can see the story points that were delivered in a release, the test strategy, and the open defects. And and you can compare them, and then of course you can see where did I deliver a huge amount of for example, a huge amount of story points, but I'm missing the test cases, which is usually in here is the sync, for example. The sync is critical, but I have no test cases, but I put a lot of effort in order to change it. So that's something which pops right away in the mind in order to do that. So that's the quality dashboard, and you have some additional dashboards. Now let's see where we are. We are almost done, and go and when the security module is finished, then we go and have a look on the quality module and at the automated test case. So there we are. Now I switch over to my testing host, and here, therefore, I use my use UFT developer, but also you can use other solutions. And the presentation you're just seeing, and you see I switch between. I have integrated multiple different solutions. I'm not. We're not bound to exactly the same configuration. This is an idea. This is a blueprint which you can use, and this is a blueprint, and of course you can use it with different solutions. So what we're doing here, I think it's 3 test cases I'm running here, and you can see this is the speakers. We changed it. Now it's successful. We did it on the development page, and now we created a user, then the user is going to buy something. And the last test case, and this was actually the test case that was failed, is the one that actually checked the labels, and these one are always successful, but the last one will then actually be the one that we more have an eye on in order to make sure that it's successful. Okay, so we buy the speaker. I'm the best seller on eBay for those red speakers, by the way. So that's it. One more, and then we can go back and have a look on Octane again and see when we are coming back to the top of our circle, and see that actually our delivery and our pipeline in Octane was really successful. So this is the test case where we're just checking the labels that we don't have Lautsprecher on the top left, but rather speaker. So it now goes through, takes a few seconds, and then it closes. That's it. So the test case is done, and we go back to our pipeline. So right now, Jenkins is pulling the results from the testing host. Once this is successful, which I expect right now, it starts the next phase. It starts the deployment into the integration environment. And to do that, we have a different system. We call it deployment automation, but it can be, of course, any other system. The idea here is to just trigger the deployment into the next system. Okay, so this one is this one's done, and we can have a look into Octane again. So we go in our pipeline. And we can see our pipeline was successful, and at this time it's green, and everything is fine. So the issue we had before is now solved. What we did not see, and I apologize, this was my fault, I did not create a vulnerability. As you remember, we also have a security scan in there. But if I go back here, for example, to another successful run, no, not this one, let's try another one. We can see here, for example, we get security vulnerabilities, and we can directly go in and we see honestly an older pipeline. And if we find security vulnerabilities, they will also be part of our of the report from Octane. And they will also be connected, and this is what we can see here. If we find vulnerabilities, those vulnerabilities will be connected to a commit and a user story in this case. And through the connection within Octane and the traceability, we can even follow those vulnerabilities up to our backlog. So let me show you this one. So I go back to the backlog. And if we have a look onto the backlog items, I think I have to, let me see if I have an old one. So for example, here we had the vulnerabilities that were resolved in the past. They will show up here as open vulnerabilities. And as you can see, we see here the closed ones, they were already resolved, and they even get populated further into the features. Let me see, I need to take out the filter here. And I need to switch it to this view. Okay, so and then even they get populated further to the feature screen. And if you have vulnerabilities, you get that shield in the vulnerabilities to give you a highlight to look at. So whether you want to accept that the vulnerability is acceptable because it's a false positive or whatsoever, or if you want to just take care of it and rather not deploy the application. So there are different ways actually to handle it. So so for the end, I think we can have a look into our deployment automation system. So this is the way in order for the next phase. And as you remember, this was one of the slides before. Once we are successful with our dev lifecycle, the next step we are going to do is going into the integration environment, and therefore I use deployment automation. Okay, was too long. So just quickly logging in again. So right now our deployment automation system is running, and what's happening actually is first we have, as you remember, I have 2 Docker containers where I run my my integration environment. Both of them, within them I have agents. So I tear down the application and I redeploy the application onto both of my Docker containers, and then I start the next phase of my verification, which is currently running here. So the undeployment was successful, the deployment was successful. Now if we go into our integration environment and I do a refresh, I would expect that I have the speakers now here as well. So we are in the next phase. And of course, what we can do, we can have a look on the next pipeline, and this is my integration pipeline. And I also have it as a Blue Ocean, the nice view within Jenkins. So we already ran the functional test cases. Now we're running the security tests. Now this is the dynamic test, which runs against the live application. And after this is successful, we will run the performance test. And for the performance test, I connect to our cloud solution, the Load Runner Cloud, and run the load test from this environment to my local system here. So this was in roughly 1 hour a use case, how you can use ALM Octane in a DevOps environment, create when you have a defect or a user story, use it with the agile methodology, integrate it with an IDE, do the code changes, run the build of the application, automatic deployment, automated test cases in various aspects with functional testing, security testing, load and performance testing. I don't do it in the dev environment, but of course you could also do it in the dev environment. I just do it in the integration environment. And then of course getting all the various aspects, the graphs, the reports out of Octane in order to successfully deliver a agile project. And you can do that not just for a single team, single project. You can do that across the whole enterprise with a safe methodology. So, and with that, I would give it back to Andreas and would be interested if there is a discussion going on, if there are some questions, maybe complaints, I don't know.
We have some questions. What version of Octane is it?
Ha! I actually shouldn't tell you. It's the version that will be available in the near future. So, okay. But the functionality you saw today is the functionality that's on our SaaS system right now, and is more or less available with the current on-premise version. There are just slight functionality additions in the SaaS version right now.
Okay. Is there a place to get a list of third-party tools that integrate with ALM Octane?
I don't think we have each and every third-party solution on the list. The basic idea is it's connected through REST, and of course through REST API you can do a lot. Yeah? Okay. Also, what we offer is Micro Focus Connect, which is a synchronization solution into other products, and the Micro Focus Connect works as a hub, so you create connections to specific systems. So there's of course a connector to Octane, and then of course we have connectors to various other systems. And if that's not there, there's also an SDK in order to create your own connectors if you want. This is for synchronizing data. On the other hand, for example, if you want to connect IDEs, I think the most prominent ones are Eclipse, IntelliJ, Visual Studio. So for all of them, there are the agents and the plugins that we provide as an open source. For another big connection part is the CI/CD part. So for the servers, there is the most prominent is probably Jenkins, then it's TeamCity, Bamboo, TFS. So I think then we already covered probably 95 to 98% of the CIs in the market. There are all the plugins available in order to do that. If not, there is also an SDK in order to do that. So I think there are various ways in order to do that, and one of the most common integration ways is actually doing it through CI/CD. For example, it's the unit tests are all connected through CI/CD, where I get all the data in from there. And one comment to that in terms of integration, the demo you saw, I did not program a single line for the integration. So neither for the testing solutions nor for the IDEs, it was just a configuration, of course. Yeah? Just adding the tokens, adding the URLs that are necessary in order for this demo to work together. So it's rather easy to set it up in that way, and it's not a lot of integration. It's not a lot of coding, creating adapters, and so on in order to achieve that. And
Andreas, perhaps
yes?
I may add. Thank you. That was a very elaborated explanation. On the ADM help pages of ALM Octane, there is also a list of integrations, I think, for those interested in the high-level overview first. And we have just sent the link to that in the answers section of the Q&A.
Okay. Thank you.
Another question is there a migration path to Octane for quality center users?
What we have today is a synchronization, so it's quite easy to migrate requirements and defects from a quality center or from ALM to Octane. And we have a solution to migrate the test cases. So there is a synchronizer for requirements and for defects, so this can go both ways. So therefore, if you do it one way, it's a migration. That's quite easy. For the test cases, we can support it with a one-way migration, so more or less for the manual test cases. Yeah? Automated test cases are no longer stored within Octane. Automated test cases are more or less stored in any source code management system, and you integrate them through Jenkins. Or not Jenkins, the CI solution.
Okay. Can you tell us something about the integration from Jira to Octane with MF Connect?
There is a connector for Jira. So you have you install MF Connect and use both connectors, and you can synchronize it.
Okay.
It's quite easy.
What could I synchronize?
Pardon me?
What could I synchronize? Bugs, tests?
Yeah, you can. Let me think. It's requirements and defects for sure.
Defects, yes.
With test cases, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. We have another question. How is the testing host integrated to Octane?
The testing host itself is not integrated into Octane. The testing host is connected to Jenkins, and Jenkins triggers the test cases on the testing host. So there are different ways to connect the testing host to Jenkins. It's one idea is you can do it through SSH if you run an SSH server on Windows, and of course the same works for Linux if you run unit tests. For example, that's one way actually to do that. For Windows, it's OpenSSH. I know it because I just did it last week, so I'm quite familiar with actually doing that. For Java 8, you can still use the web start and install a service on Windows. I think this will go away with Java 11. I think that's no longer supported. So the SSH probably would be the right way actually to do that. So for people interested, one of my fun projects I did over the summer month was creating a testing cloud. So where I dynamically start hosts in in a cloud environment on virtual machines and dynamically integrate them into Jenkins. And then depending on how many I have available, I distribute the test cases to the various testing hosts, yeah, until all my tests run. So whenever a test is ready, I take the next one and put it on the testing host. So this was one of my fun projects actually to do that, and it's possible to integrate and to dynamically integrate testing hosts into or nodes more in general in Jenkins.
Okay. One more question. Could I use ALM Octane? Could I install ALM Octane and ALM QC on the same server, or did I need a separate server for Octane?
So what's the best answer for me to give here?
I think you need a separate server because Octane needs a lot of memory.
No, so the recommendation, the official recommendation is, of course, please use separate servers.
Yes.
The technical answer is you can run it on the same system because they are not. They run in different virtual Java machines, so they are not really. Of course, you have to use different ports and so on. Yes, I had it on the same machine as well. The official correct answer from Micro Focus is please use different machines. Yeah? But from the technical perspective, it should work. I wouldn't see any issues. Yeah? Probably my PM guys now I get a lot of calls now because I said it. Something like that.
Okay, so those were all questions.
Are there perhaps some more questions? So perhaps we take 1 minute or so. If there are additional questions, possibly follow up. Nevertheless, we can also give you a perspective of a possible follow-up activity. Michael already mentioned it. So you will soon receive an invitation for a follow-up workshop where we will have the opportunity to dive deeper into technical aspects and also explore the questions you posed today in more detail. So Andreas will host a practitioner workshop where we can interactively look into things that you have raised in the question, and maybe you will have additional aspects, additional questions until that date. It will be on 17th of November, and as I said, you will receive a separate invitation in the next few days. So as it looks, yeah, we do not actually have additional questions. So then this is the time for me to say thank you, Andreas, again very much for this great demo and for the very instructive explanations. And let me also say thank you to you all for your participation today and for your contributions and active contributions during the Q&A session. Thank you very much. As we mentioned at the beginning, this event has been recorded, and within the next few days you will also receive the link for later replay. And when you soon leave this webinar, there will pop up a brief survey. Please take a second and fill it in so that we can better serve you in the future with our future webinars. Thank you very much again. Hope to see you at future Vivid events. And in the meantime, take care, have a good day, and stay well and healthy. Thank you very much.
Thank you from my side as well. Bye-bye.